Hi, everybody. It's Becky with New Hampshire Audubon. And good morning, actually, good afternoon to you. It's noontime today. And welcome to New Hampshire Audubon's Q&A. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have. If you have a chance and can send me a comment, let me know if you can see and hear me. Most folks who followed this will know that I often have technological challenges. Last time I couldn't see the comments, but evidently everybody was making comments. So the first thing I'm going to do this morning is to address some of the questions that came up in the comments in the last session. And I don't know, I may not be seeing comments again today. So we'll hope that you all can see and hear me. I'm not seeing any comments yet, but hi to everybody. And I'm uh, hoping maybe some of you who know me could send me a quick email at work if I'm coming through okay. Uh, and then I'll know that you all can see and hear me. But what I'm going to start out today is just saying hi to some folks that left comments last time that I, of course, could not see. And that's hi to Missy LeBlanc. I haven't seen you in ages, Missy. It was really great to see a message from you. And I saw Brenda was down in Virginia and Anita in North Carolina. It's fun to have some folks watching from so far away. I'm getting a very strange delay on my screen, so I'm hoping you all can see and hear me okay. We had some questions last time in the comments. We had a tropical storm come through, the remnants of Hurricane Isaias, and there was a question about whether there was an uptick in injured birds due to the hurricane. Well, no, there was not that I heard about, probably because the winds had calmed considerably by the time they got to New Hampshire. I know we had some damage farther western in the western part of the state and into Vermont, but no particular uptick in injured birds. People also asked if there were rare birds associated with the hurricane. And we had one rare bird that came in. We didn't learn out about it until a number of days later, but there was a sooty tern that showed up at Pleasant Lake in Deerfield. Why it chose Pleasant Lake, who knows? But it was there. It rested on somebody's boat, and we don't know if it was there and right after the storm and stayed for several days, or actually was trying to get back to the ocean, returning from even farther inland. Came in and was resting at Pleasant Lake. It was sitting on someone's boat and there in the evening, but then not there the next morning. And sometimes when birds like that get entrained in a hurricane, they can become exhausted and actually have a hard time moving on. The sooty tern is a species from way southern tip of Florida into the Caribbean, South America. So they are um, one of the species that we sometimes have moving with hurricanes that get entrained in the hurricanes, but they are very, very far from home. Well, it looks like once again I'm having the same problem and not seeing comments. I'm going to trust that you all are out there and that you can see me and that you can hear me. And I will go ahead and answer a couple of the other questions that came in last time via the comments. We talked about hurricane and the rare birds. Um, Donna asked about whippoorwills and if they were quieting down. And whippoorwills have quieted down. They sing in the evening. They sing most commonly on full moon nights with their whippoorwill, whippoorwill, whippoorwill. So that's a very distinctive song that you hear in the evenings. And they will get quieter, but they could sing all the way into September. We've had reports of them singing in May, I think about the third week in September, which would be about as late as they're going to be here. Whippoorwills are insect eaters, so they're going to head farther south. Um, and they'll be gone, or they should be gone by the end of September, because once we get into October with our cooler nights and cooler temperatures, there's not the same kind of insect population around for them to feed on. But they're probably singing less than they were in the spring. Again, hormones are going to influence some of their songs and some of their singing and how much they sing. So yes, they're quieter. When they do sing in the evening, they're probably going to sing for a much shorter period of time. You know, sometimes they can sing well into the evening. Um, some people say all night long. But that would be primarily in the springtime when they're really getting their territories set up. And then that singing gets a little bit shorter in each as we go into the summer season. So when they start singing, they may only sing for a shorter period of time. And they, at this time of year, they may not even sing at all on some nights. Excuse me. Um, they may only sing when the moon is full and maybe just for a short period of time. So you start hearing them less and less and less. Um, And another question that came in was what's going on with all the yellow-billed cuckoos? We've talked about that for a few times. The cuckoos um, are birds that feed on hairy caterpillars. They'll eat non-hairy caterpillars as well, but the hairy caterpillars are ones that they're specially adapted to eating. And so their populations can increase with outbreaks of hairy caterpillars, particularly things like gypsy moths. And there was an outbreak, I mentioned this last time, there was an outbreak in sort of the lower Connecticut River Valley, Western Mass, of gypsy moths last year. So that may have created a little bit of an influx in the cuckoo population. And this year we have some great caterpillar populations that Hubbard Brook Experimental Forest has been reporting. And that's not hairy caterpillars, they're smooth caterpillars, but they're still great food for cuckoos. So the general thought is the cuckoo population has increased some and there's great food for them. So we're seeing and hearing a lot of them. And the yellow-billed cuckoos have a couple of different calls. One is a cow, 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 cow call. The black-billed cuckoo tends to do a coo-coo-coo, 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 coo-coo-coo. The yellow-billed can do that coo-coo-coo call, but tends not to do it consistently the way the black-bills do. And the yellow-bills can also do a single coo, coo, coo. So you can kind of listen for those. Somebody sent in a recording to New Hampshire Audubon just the other day with a recording of the yellow-billed cuckoo. So, all right. Okay, I'm trusting that you can see and hear me. It's Becky with New Hampshire Audubon. I'm not seeing any comments yet again. I'll have to figure out what in the world is going on with that, and I apologize. They should be able to see those. I'm just checking something really quickly in one of my settings here. So, only your followers. You should be able to make comments. Well, all right. Well, we're going to keep addressing some of the other comments that came up last time. And thank you for leaving those. I really appreciate that. We mentioned hawks, young hawks being out, and Melissa remarked that she had a broad-winged hawk on the wire near her. And yes, broad-winged hawks are one of the ones that are common to see on wires, and especially this time of year. Sometimes we see them early in the spring when they're first coming back, sitting on wires, but then they get quieter and less obvious when they're actually nesting, and then when the young are out of the nest, then they are more obvious hunting. You'll see them more hunting around, and sitting on wires is oftentimes an interesting place to see them. I wanted to mention a very exciting bird sighting that we just had, a swallow-tailed kite. These are birds from the far south, southern Florida, maybe the southern coast of Louisiana and into the Gulf Coast of Texas. But they're very rare in New Hampshire. We've had maybe 4 or so other sightings in the state over all time. And this past few days, actually on Sunday, we had 2 different swallowtail kites in the state. One was in the Lebanon area and one in the Webster area. So that was, they were both photographed. The excellent documentation of them. They're also very distinctive birds. So I'm going to try and hold up a picture of them in the book. Hold on for a sec here. Let's see if you can see them. Where's my finger? There we go. I'm trying to point to them. So they have a long tail with a distinctive black and white pattern. They are absolutely beautiful birds. So keep your eyes open if you happen to be in either of those town areas. The one in Lebanon was near the Price Chopper, of all places, and has not been reported again. But the one in Webster has been seen a couple of different times. I don't have the specific location on that, but you can check some resources in New Hampshire eBird to see where that was seen. But they catch insects on the wing, particularly dragonflies. So even though it was seen in one place on one day, it may not hang around in that place. It may be out flying around a lot. So just keep your eyes up and open and watch for them. We had some reports in the state actually earlier this summer, and it was even before the tropical storm came through. So there definitely were some birds around. Sorry about that. I was just heard a noise that was distracting me. I apologize. So I don't think that the swallowtail kites were entrained in the storm. They aren't the type of bird that would sort of get entrained in storms. We usually see more seabirds that happens to because of the path that hurricanes take. But it's very exciting to have them in the state. So we're thrilled to have that. A couple of questions that came up recently I wanted to go over again with everybody, and I apologize again that my comments aren't working. The next time I do a Q&A, I'll go into the office and see if that makes a difference, and if that's the reason I'm not seeing them. I show comments right here on the screen, but just not showing them. So, all right. Same problem as last time. It's got to be a setting somewhere that I don't know about. So, all right, just going to keep going with that. I had the experience this past weekend of finding an injured bird. And I know that happens to a number of us, and we want to do something to help. So I wanted to give a few tips on the best things to do. So when you find an injured bird, and it clearly can't fly, then it needs to go to a wildlife rehabilitator. And there are licensed wildlife rehabilitators in the state that care for injured and orphaned wildlife. And there's a directory on the New Hampshire Fish and Game website that will list the licensed rehabilitators and their locations and their contact information. So you want to go on that website, and look for somebody near you. You can call New Hampshire Audubon. We've got a recording with a standard number on it if you need it. But the best thing to do is go to the New Hampshire Fish and Game website, look for wildlife rehabilitator and give them a call, because the bird needs to get to them. We want people who are caring for these birds to have the proper credentials, and that's what the licensing process is all about. So um, when you find an injured bird, you want to put it in a, a, a box, maybe a cardboard box, so it's quiet and dark. That will keep it calm. It helps to put something at the bottom of the box that they can grab onto with their feet, maybe a paper towel or a cloth towel on the bottom, just to have a little bit of something in the bottom. You don't need to feed it. You don't need to give it water or anything like that. The rehabilitators actually recommend that you not do that, that you don't feed it. You just put it in a box, keep it quiet, contact them, and then bring the bird to them so they can make an assessment and provide whatever care is possible. Sometimes nothing can be done for the birds, and that was the case with the bird that I found. Um, Unfortunately, its injury was too severe. It had broken its back. Um, and sometimes there are wing injuries that cannot be dealt with, but other times they can be saved, and there are some things that can be done for them to help them to survive. So if you find an injured bird, please just go ahead and follow those procedures and contact a licensed wildlife rehabilitator. Don't try to feed it. Don't guess what it might eat. Um, we can do more harm than good by feeding it the wrong thing. So it's best to let the professionals do their job at taking care of them. Um, I also wanted to mention another thing that happens around this time of year is that sometimes bats get into our house. And this is the time of year when young bats are becoming independent, they're learning to fly, they're learning their way around, and they can get through the smallest spaces. And how they end up in your house, it is amazing. But this is the time of year when that tends to happen because the young birds are finding their way around, and they get into places where they really don't want to be. They don't want to be in your house. So the best thing to do if you find a bat in your house is to open a window and close everything else off. If you can do that, if it's in something like a bedroom, open the window, open the screen, close the door, and it will find its way out. You can try to use something like a badminton racket, a couple of them, and gently get the bat onto the racket and put the other one over it and carry it outside like that. Generally, bats in the house are fine, but bats can carry rabies, so you don't want to handle them with your bare hands. That's not a good idea. And that's why it's best if you can just leave window or door open so that the bat can find its way out on its own. In the daytime, the bats don't usually fly a lot. That's their resting time. So it's usually not till the evening when they're actually flying around. And they use echolocation to see. So they actually find their way by hearing. They send out pulses of sound and listen to the echoes that come back. And that's how they find their prey. That's how they find their way around when they're flying. That's how they'll find an open window or door. So the best thing you can do is to let them get out on their own. And and as yeah, the young bat will be very grateful to be out of the house. And you may find that it only happens once a year at this time of year, and it's because of those young ones. Um, so that's happening right about now. And we've gotten questions from people who have bats nesting in their attic or inhabiting their attic. They don't nest. They give birth to live young, but they'll be in the attic and their droppings become a problem. And there are people who specialize in the humane removal of bats. You can also watch for where the bat is coming and going, what the access point is to your attic. They come out in the evening, so the best thing to do is watch in the evening. See if you can find the openings. There may be just one, there may be more than one, but look for those openings. And then in the fall, after the bats have left, they fly to a hibernation location for the wintertime, um, for the most part, and you can block up that opening. There are a few bats, big brown bats, that will sometimes hibernate in barns, big barns, places like that. But most bats go to caves to hibernate. Some will go south, some will go to caves in New Hampshire. But they'll be gone, should be gone by the end of October, and then you can block up those openings where you um, have seen them come out of the house. All right, it's an injured bird. We have a couple of phenomenons to look forward to coming up, and one's going to be starting right away, and that is nighthawk migration. Now, common nighthawks are not hawks. They are related to whippoorwills that we are just talking about. They're insect eaters. So they catch insects on the wing. They're one of our aerial insectivores. And I study common nighthawks, and they've been declining in the state. There aren't very many of them. We, at least for nesting. And so we used to have them nesting in our cities and towns. They'd nest on stone rooftops. So you could hear them on summer nights outside doing their distinctive peent call. Peent, 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 um, as they fly around, and the males display over potential nest sites. So I've been following them. We've had a good year this year and some good nesting, but they're only in a few locations. There is still some in Concord. There was a nest in Keene. They're in the Ossipee Pine Barrens, and a few places like Grantham, Leominster, Mount Cardigan on some bare ridge lines. But anywhere from 10 to 20 nesting pairs at the most each year in the state. But a lot of them nest farther north in Canada. And as the nesting season wraps up, which it's doing right now, they're pretty much done nesting. There may be a late nest, but for the most part, the chicks should be out and flying around, catching food on their own. Once that happens, migration kicks in and gets underway. And nighthawk migration is an interesting phenomenon. It's much like broad-winged hawk migration in that there are a few peak nights when you can see a lot of nighthawks migrating. And that tends to happen at the end of August, in the last week in August, somewhere between the 24th and the 31st, on a calm evening, sometimes with south winds. And you'd think they'd want a tailwind with north winds, but we see them in migration best on south winds. And you can see some huge flocks of them. If they find a swarm of flying ants, they'll flock up. You might have 100 to 150 to 200, even 500 in one big group. And it's quite spectacular to see. And the migration can start, well, it could start now, but we tend to see the early ones coming through around the 17th or 18th of August. So coming right up. If you've got a high place you can get to and watch, we tend to see some good numbers along the river valleys, like the Merrimack River Valley, the Connecticut River Valley. There are some efforts to monitor the nighthawks. but you can go out and look for them just about anywhere. And I'd encourage you to do that because it's really a pretty neat phenomenon to watch. Nighthawks, as I mentioned, they feed on flying insects, and they're active usually at dawn and dusk. And the time that we see migration is usually between, say, 5 and 7 p.m. In that time, once the sun is is kind of going down, well, it gets harder to see them anyway. Um, in the nesting time, they'll be active after sunset, and you can hear them because they're peeping. So even if it's dark, you can hear them, and you know that they're around on the nesting site. But during migration, they're usually silent. We hardly ever hear them making any noise. So as they're going in migration, you want to try and watch for them when you can still see, and that's indeed when they seem to be the most active, probably looking for those flying ant swarms. But we still don't know a lot about their migration and whether they continue migrating when it gets dark and we're just seeing them because they're low in the evenings. We just don't know on that. But that's a wonderful time to look for them. Chimney swifts also gather in big numbers at about the same time. And both of these birds have thin pointed wings. They're very different in size. The chimney swifts are small. They're maybe chickadee size, swallow size, and the nighthawks are bigger. They're maybe mourning dove size. But when you see them in silhouette and they're far away, it's actually can be a challenge to tell them apart. But if they're closer, you'll see the bright white patches on the nighthawk wings. They have a white patch on each wing. I'll see if I can find it in the book and show it to you because it's quite distinctive. And the little chimney swifts have all dark wings. So I'm just opening up my book here and see if I can get the common nighthawk in flight so you can see it. Let's see. Can you see the white patches on the wings there? That's what you can see when you're watching them and they're flying over you. So nighthawk migration time. It's a little early to think about raptor migration time, hawk migration. That will be more coming up next month in September. But end of August, time to watch for common nighthawks. And as when the chimney swifts gather in big numbers, they sometimes roost in a single chimney. And there can be 150 to 200 going into one chimney that they really like. And they'll go in just as it's getting dark. And you can see them swirling around. When I've been watching nighthawks in downtown Concord from one of the parking garage roofs, I've seen swirls of chimney swifts, and then they'll go down into the chimney and they go down so fast it's really hard to count. But it's a real treat to watch them if you can find where the chimney is that they're going into. And it isn't always the same chimney each night. It can vary, but sometimes they'll have one chimney they like one year and not another. But I've seen them go into one chimney one night and then not use it again. So they're interesting birds, but again, this is a time of year to watch for that because the youngs are out, they're fledged, they'll be feeding on insects in the evening, and then they go into roost at night in the chimneys. So I really appreciate you all joining me. It's Becky with New Hampshire Audubon, and I'll see if I can get this issue with my comments figured out and fixed. So the next time that I do a Q&A, I'll be able to see your comments. What I did this time, I was able to see the comments when I looked at the the video in Facebook afterwards. So you can go ahead and leave comments now if you have questions you want me to look at. I'll look at the video in Facebook and then see if I can address your comments our next time around and see if I can figure out why I'm not seeing any comments here. Maybe my connectivity at home is causing problems. And I'll mention, as I always do, that if you have a question you'd like to email in, you can send it to birdsetc@nhaudubon.org. That's birdsetc@nhaudubon.org. And there are volunteer naturalists that can help answer your questions. You can also send a message on Facebook too. Happy to look there. Thanks again for joining me. It's Becky with New Hampshire Audubon, and as always, we really appreciate your support. Hope you'll make a donation online to New Hampshire Audubon on our homepage. Well, on our page, our website. There we go. I knew I'd get that. Thanks very much. Take care, everybody.